Coming out of the weekend of March 24th, we had another round robin of boxing matches, and it was very much entertaining. And to that note, Moses Itauma, who highlighted his first card against Jermaine Franklin, produced the goods for his supporters in the UK. I still have questions about Itauma, but he did exactly what it was all set up to be, and understand that those words were selected specifically, set up to be. Let's talk about this fight. What could be on the horizon for Itauma? And what is really going on in the heavyweight division? Because there's so much more that should be transpiring, but we're not seeing the best and the cream of the crop face one another. So it's another thing to talk about. And so it is now in the history books. Moses Itauma did exactly what was planned. He was able to go a couple of more rounds in his career against Jermaine Franklin. The idea about bringing the experienced Franklin over to face Itauma, who's only 21 years of age, by the way, was to give him more rounds because he had been blowing through competition, having only gone 6 rounds twice early in his career when he first turned pro. But his recent victories have saw him take out his opponents and look formidable, to say the least. And against Franklin, whom I deemed had come in out of shape, at 256 pounds plus, I was like, oh no, because this fight was put on a delay due to an injury suffered in training by Itauma. It was supposed to take place earlier in the year. But instead of using that additional time to get in the most optimum of shape, the most that Franklin was able to do was cut the dreads out of his head. But his body looked as soft as a Pillsbury biscuit. And in the heavyweight division, when you're the cream of the crop, that's not the shape of your body. Now, there have been other fighters who have been able to escape the reality of coming in woefully out of shape, and Franklin is definitely not one of them, because it was early as the second round that Moses got to him. And see, this is the thing. He has fast hands. His footwork on the aggressive side moving forward is decent, but his defense is leaping back out of the way of shots. But when he's being offensive and aggressor, he puts people into what I call, he puts them in a bag where they're covering up and they're cowering to his onslaught, but he is wide open for counters. Now, against Franklin, he did these things And Franklin did throw a couple of shots back that landed. But it was still not enough, because what Moses was able to do was finally get him to a place where just when Franklin got laxed enough and lost concentration, he landed a very telling blow, which was an uppercut. It happened in the 5th round. And there goes Franklin, who had never been stopped before on the canvas. Itauma was smiling. He was coy about the entire situation. But no one smiled and beamed more than Frank Warren, Queensberry promoter, because the whole objective was to showcase Itauma in a fight. They recognized that just stopping guys in 1 round or 2 rounds is not enough for the public sentiment to build. So to bring in a Western fighter, a guy from the U.S., a heavyweight, who's kind of out of shape, doesn't look the best, has a reputation having gone the distance with 2 top UK fighters in the past. And that would have been Anthony Joshua and Dillian White. But we see that this is how they're operating now. Warren has learned a lot from Don King and Bob Arum, as they've had successes over him and his stable of fighters throughout the years. And now that he is in possession of the entire division in the top 10 is in his stable, he knows that marketing is very much a premium. And they love to market their fighters out of the UK, even before the fighters become good. It's really that simple. And Jermaine Franklin played right along into this script. I didn't like what I was looking at. And even though Itauma came out on top, I'm still questioning a lot to do with his career. At 21, he can't be smarter than other guys that have been in the sport for a decade or more. At 21 and 14 fights now, he can't be better seasoned and polished than fighters who have been around for a decade or more. But see, they will sell you on the sentiments that he's a young up-and-comer. What they're trying to say is he's the UK version of Mike Tyson. Far from the truth, but Mike Tyson, who was schooled by Cus D'Amato, had a reputation of being not only exciting, but very active. He fought frequent, and by the time he challenged for a world title, I believe he was just near 30 fights, around 28 or 29 fights. And that was what you want to see out of a young fighter, that you're trying to get him seasoned enough to take on veteran opposition. Moses hasn't faced that yet. And there's not a lot of that out there internationally. But there are a lot of those fighters like that over in Warren's camp, where he has pretty much 8 to 10 of the top fighters in the division. And understandably, he didn't pull one of those men out to face Itauma. He went outside and into the U.S. to find someone. That's more telling than anything. In the meantime, all of the UK guys are speaking praises on Itauma. And they're talking about how good he is and how he's ready for the next level and so forth and so on. It sounds good, but I don't really believe that. And so they're going to optimize what this young man does. I'm hearing now that they're even considering bringing him to the U.S. But I can bet you that if he does come to the U.S., they'll either find one of the lowest rated fighters in the U.S. who's been on television before, or someone from elsewhere, but to have him fight here on U.S. soil. It's a ploy, and we've seen this ploy before. Itauma may have a greater upside than AJ simply because he's a younger fighter that they're grooming. He didn't have the Olympics experience that AJ had, but what they're doing collectively in the UK is celebrating the man as if he really has this great potential and outlook. In the meantime, you have heavyweights like Daniel Dubois and Fabio Wardley who are going to be facing one another coming up soon. They are the ones that are not getting the spotlight, and they should be. Dubois because he's a two-time heavyweight champion, and Wardley because he's a white-collar fighter, according to their terms, that came in and had won a world title when no one thought it was possible for him. So why aren't those men being marketed like this young man who has a long path ahead of him? You see, that's, again, the ploy. And they do this because the public sentiment isn't strong enough anymore to stand against people being railroaded. When you have fighters like Ajit Kabiel, who should have received his world title shot already, or even Fabio Wardley, who won enough of the competing fights leading up to a title shot, should be in the mix of consideration. In the meantime, the heavyweight champion of the world, Alexander Usyk, is fighting kickboxers and talking about having a trilogy match with Tyson Fury, someone he beat handily in 2 fights. But see, this is what happens when the public sentiment is so soft that they won't even call these fighters out for their wrongdoings. In the meantime, Itauma is starting to gripe about why he hasn't had a title shot. With 13 fights, and you don't really know if you can fight 10 rounds, hard, tough, and rugged. You've never really been tested. You've been in against fighters who have cooperated with you, but not one fight have you been in when someone says, I don't know, this is a 50-50 match here. We could see Itauma lose his first bout. And see, that's the thing. What they say over there is, well, you don't want to move him too quickly. What? But he should have a title shot over Ajit Kabiel or Fabio Wardley. Stop the foolishness. But what do you think? This is Stormy B. Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know what you think should be next for Moses Itauma, and should he be getting a title shot so soon? Leave comments and let's discuss further. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.